Texas doesn't charge a state income tax. That's the part everyone knows. What most retirees miss is the second layer, the structural loophole that lets you skip septic permits entirely if you buy 10 acres or more, saving you $10,000 to $30,000 before you even break ground. And the third layer, a property tax freeze that kicks in at 65 and locks your biggest annual expense at that year's rate forever. These three mechanisms stack together in specific regions where land runs as low as $888 per acre, where annual property taxes bottom out at $405, and where regulators have functionally zero enforcement power. We're walking through 15 regions clustered by what they optimize for. Some give you the cheapest land but force you to solve water. Others cost more upfront but rain enough to eliminate wells entirely. Here are 15 Texas regions where off-grid living saves you thousands. Sierra Blanca. Start with the financial champion. Hudspeth County runs a median land price of $888 per acre. 10-acre tracts list around $19,975. The average annual property tax paid here is $508, the lowest operational cost structure you'll find anywhere in Texas. The regulatory environment has very few restrictions. You can place an RV, tiny home, or camper without filing permits or hiring licensed contractors. Hudspeth sits in the high desert with the highest solar irradiance in the state, meaning your panels produce more power per square foot than anywhere else. The trade-off is water. Drilling a well costs $15,000 to $30,000 with geological uncertainty. The alternative is water hauling at $500 to $1,000 monthly. You're also 45 to 60 minutes from El Paso for groceries and healthcare. This region works if you want the absolute lowest long-term carrying costs and you've committed to extreme self-sufficiency. Dell City. Dell City sits further north in the same county with similar financial advantages. Land prices remain exceptionally low, and some parcels near the J.B. Howell Farm area have existing power lines within reach for semi-off-grid setups. Dell City itself has a population of 245 with a post office but no hospital. The aridity limits ranching severely. The land supports roughly 1 cow per 150 acres without supplemental feed. The appeal is identical to Sierra Blanca. Rock-bottom land cost, near-zero taxes, total building freedom, excellent solar conditions with slightly more social connection than absolute emptiness. Dryden. Terrell County pushes isolation even further. This is rugged ranch land marketed primarily for hunting and recreation. The parcels are large, often sold as 100-acre-plus tracts, and priced affordably relative to the size. Regulatory presence is almost theoretical. There's no one checking what you build or how you build it as long as you're not violating basic health codes. Some of these ranch tracts come with existing infrastructure. You'll find listings that include multiple water wells already drilled, barns, sheds, and sometimes even old ranch houses that can be renovated or used for parts. That existing infrastructure can save you tens of thousands in setup costs if you're willing to work with what's there rather than starting from scratch. A property with 2 functioning wells eliminates the single biggest financial risk of desert homesteading. The landscape offers dramatic mountain views and the same high solar potential as the rest of West Texas. The night skies are extraordinary because there's no light pollution for miles in any direction. If solitude is what you're optimizing for, Terrell delivers it completely. You can stand on your land and see nothing but natural terrain in every direction, which is increasingly rare even in rural America. The catch is absolute remoteness. Langtree is famous for Judge Roy Bean's old saloon, but it's essentially a historical marker now. Any grocery run, any medical appointment, any hardware store trip requires serious planning and long drives. This region is for retirees who want to disappear and who have the resilience to manage everything themselves. You need to be comfortable with the reality that help, if you need it, is hours away. Bracketville. Kinney County holds the lowest average annual property tax payment in the entire dataset, $405. That's the number that matters most for long-term budget stability. Combine that with the 10-acre septic exemption and you've eliminated nearly all recurring costs. Your budget becomes food, fuel, and occasional maintenance, expenses you control directly rather than fixed obligations imposed by government entities. The land here is affordable, though specific per-acre pricing varies by tract size and features. The regulatory environment favors homesteading. Unincorporated areas don't impose building restrictions, so you're free to construct whatever shelter makes sense for your budget and skills. That might mean starting with an RV while you build a tiny house slowly over 2 years, adding rooms as funds become available. The climate is transitional between the extreme high desert and the brushy South Texas plains. That transition brings better wildlife habitat, white-tailed deer, turkey, javelina, which adds hunting and fishing to your self-sufficiency toolkit. The terrain supports more vegetation than the barren stretches of Hudspeth, so if you're interested in permaculture or food forests, you'll have slightly better soil moisture and plant diversity to work with. Native plants establish more easily, and water retention in the soil is measurably better. Kinney sits close enough to the Mexican border that you'll see Border Patrol activity regularly, but the area itself is quiet and safe. The main limitation is services. You're remote, though not as isolated as Terrell County. Bracketville provides basic amenities, and you can reach larger towns within reasonable drives. The financial equation here is nearly perfect for retirees focused purely on minimizing annual expenses while maintaining some connection to basic infrastructure. Pecos City. Pecos County delivers the second lowest average annual property tax payment at $422. The land is affordable, the regulatory environment in unincorporated areas is permissive, and the climate supports excellent solar energy production. The combination creates a financial profile almost as attractive as Kinney County. The critical planning detail here is the city of Pecos itself. Inside city limits and within the extraterritorial jurisdiction, the city enforces the International Residential Code. If you want to place a tiny home, it must be under 400 square feet, meet ceiling height requirements, and be built to IRC standards. You'll need building permits, licensed contractors, and stamped engineered plans. That compliance process adds thousands of dollars and weeks of delays, potentially months if the building department is backlogged. The strategy is simple: buy land explicitly outside the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction. That keeps you under county oversight, which in practice means minimal interference. You preserve the flexibility to use RVs, non-IRC tiny homes, or alternative structures without the bureaucratic burden. When you're looking at listings, ask the seller directly whether the parcel falls within the city's ETJ boundaries. That single question can save you enormous headaches later. Pecos as a town offers more services than the extreme desert counties: grocery stores, basic healthcare, hardware supplies. You're still remote, but the logistical strain is lighter. The combination of low taxes, good solar, and reasonable access makes this region attractive for retirees who want most of the financial benefits of extreme off-grid living without quite as much isolation. You can make a grocery run in 20 minutes instead of an hour, and that difference compounds over years of living there. Ozona. Crockett County sits on the high plateau of West Texas, deep in ranching territory. The land here is sold in large tracts. Median lot size is 860 acres, with a median price per acre around $2,250. That's substantially higher than Hudspeth, but the trade-off is guaranteed seclusion and the kind of space that makes large-scale solar installations or extensive water storage systems easy to design without worrying about setbacks or neighbor complaints. Regulatory interference is minimal because the focus is on ranching, not residential development. County officials aren't showing up to inspect your solar array or your water tanks. As long as you're managing your sewage on-site and not creating obvious nuisances, you're left alone. The assumption in ranching counties is that landowners know how to manage their property responsibly, and the regulatory approach reflects that assumption. Ozona serves as the county hub, offering basic supplies and services, but travel times across the county are long. If your property is on the far edge of the county, you might be 45 minutes from town. This region works for retirees who need vast space, maybe for experimental agriculture, maybe for privacy, maybe for large livestock operations. The upfront cost is higher, but the operational freedom is absolute, and you're buying enough land that resale value holds even in down markets because ranchers always need more acreage. Fort Davis. Jeff Davis County trades some financial advantage for environmental quality. The average annual property tax here is $972, higher than the ultra-cheap desert counties but still reasonable compared to suburban Texas or most other states. The land cost reflects the premium of elevation and scenery. This is recognized as some of the most beautiful terrain in West Texas. Fort Davis sits in the Davis Mountains at higher elevation, which means cooler summer temperatures and more dramatic landscapes than the flat desert. The climate is still arid enough for excellent solar production, but the heat is less oppressive, and the winters can actually get cold enough to require backup heating. You're looking at occasional freezes and maybe even light snow, which changes your construction planning. You need better insulation than you would in Hudspeth. The standout feature here is the McDonald Observatory, which enforces strict light pollution ordinances across the region. That means you're living under some of the darkest night skies in North America. If stargazing matters to you, if you're interested in amateur astronomy, if you simply value the quality of night darkness, Jeff Davis is worth the extra cost. The observatory's presence also brings a modest tourism economy, which means Fort Davis has better restaurants and cultural amenities than you'd expect in a remote mountain town. This region attracts retirees who are optimizing for lifestyle and natural beauty rather than rock-bottom expenses. You're still off-grid capable, still benefiting from the 10-acre septic rule and the 65-plus tax freeze, but you're paying a premium for location. The question is whether the mountains and the stars justify the additional $200 to $300 annually in property taxes compared to Hudspeth. Terlingua. Brewster County hosts Terlingua Ranch, one of the most famous off-grid communities in Texas. Land here is marketed as recreational property with 5-acre parcels sometimes listed as low as $8,699. The restrictions are minimal, leading to a patchwork of tiny homes, RVs, trailers, and custom-built structures scattered across the ranch divisions. Terlingua has developed a distinct culture, part artist colony, part survivalist enclave, part vacation getaway. The area attracts people who value community and proximity to Big Bend National Park. There are informal social networks, occasional gatherings at the Starlight Theater or the Trading Post, and a general vibe of mutual aid among the off-grid residents. If your water system fails, neighbors will help. If you need to borrow tools, someone has them. The regulatory environment generally accepts alternative structures, though some ranch divisions have low-level covenant restrictions that prohibit certain uses or require minimal setbacks. Those restrictions are rarely enforced aggressively, but it's worth reviewing the specific covenants for your parcel before buying. The Property Owners Association exists but operates with a light touch, focused mainly on road maintenance rather than building enforcement. The trade-off here is that you're not achieving the absolute lowest cost. The land isn't quite as cheap as Hudspeth, and the property taxes aren't quite as low as Kinney. What you gain is community, recreation access, and a proven track record of off-grid living that makes the transition easier for first-timers. You can learn from people who've already solved the problems you're about to encounter, which has real financial value even if it doesn't show up on a spreadsheet. Spur. Dickens County offers a completely different model. The county seat, Spur, branded itself as America's first tiny house-friendly town by eliminating minimum square footage requirements entirely. That regulatory change removes the primary obstacle for tiny home enthusiasts who want to live legally within a town that has infrastructure and services. The median land price here is $2,990 per acre. Spur itself is anchored by schools and healthcare facilities, giving you access to community resources that don't exist in the remote desert counties. You can walk to a post office, drive 5 minutes to a clinic, and interact with neighbors regularly. The school system means families live here, which creates a more conventional social environment than the scattered hermits of Hudspeth County. The financial trade-off is the property tax rate, which sits at 1.37%. That's substantially higher than the desert counties. For a 10-acre parcel valued at $30,000, you're looking at annual taxes around $411 just from the county rate, before school and other district taxes are added. The total bill will be higher than Hudspeth or Kinney, possibly exceeding $1,000 annually depending on improvements and how the appraisal district values your structures. The defense mechanism here is the 65+ tax freeze. You need to apply for it the year you turn 65 and lock in that rate immediately, preventing the higher percentage from compounding as your property value increases. If you build a $30,000 tiny home and the appraisal district values your total property at $60,000, you want that freeze in place before they reassess. Spur works for retirees who want the structure and social interaction of town living combined with the legal freedom to build tiny, but it requires active tax management to stay affordable long term. Del Rio. Valverde County sits at the intersection of off-grid capability and urban access. The rural areas surrounding Del Rio offer high functional freedom. You can build alternative structures, install large solar arrays, and manage your own water systems without regulatory interference. Meanwhile, Del Rio itself provides a full complement of city services: hospitals, grocery stores, hardware suppliers, and restaurants. The defining geographic feature here is Lake Amistad, a massive reservoir that provides both recreation and a stable water source. If you're planning to haul water, you have easy access to a clean, abundant supply without driving an hour each way. If you're building a rainwater harvesting system, the lake acts as psychological backup, reducing the anxiety of running dry during drought. That mental security has real value. You're more likely to commit to off-grid living if you know water is available nearby. This region is ideal for retirees who want robust off-grid systems, solar power, water independence, food production, but who aren't willing to sacrifice access to healthcare and shopping. You can live 15 minutes outside Del Rio on unrestricted land and still reach a hospital within 20 minutes if something goes wrong. That safety margin is worth the slightly higher land cost for many retirees, particularly those managing chronic conditions that require occasional medical attention. The climate here supports good solar production while avoiding the extreme heat of Hudspeth. Summers are hot but not unbearable. The terrain offers more vegetation than the high desert, giving you options for gardening and landscaping that soften the harshness of pure desert living. Valverde represents a middle path, not the cheapest, not the most isolated, but balanced in a way that reduces stress while preserving most of the financial benefits of off-grid retirement. Hill Country. Llano County represents the premium tier of Texas off-grid living. The median price per acre here is $24,675, nearly 27 times higher than Hudspeth County. The average annual property tax payment is $1,496. By every financial metric, this is the most expensive option in the analysis. What you're paying for is the hill country itself: rolling hills, live oak trees, access to the Llano River and nearby lakes, and proximity to the cultural amenities of Fredericksburg and Austin. The natural beauty here is exceptional, and the recreational opportunities are endless. You can kayak, fish, hike, and explore limestone caves all within a short drive. The social environment is more affluent and educated than the remote desert counties, which matters if you value intellectual conversation and cultural activities. You're also close to established intentional communities like Homestead Heritage near Waco, which offers workshops, supplies, and social networks for people pursuing self-sufficiency. Those communities provide training in traditional skills, blacksmithing, timber framing, cheese making, that can accelerate your transition to off-grid living while building social connections. The financial strategy here relies entirely on the 10-acre septic exemption to avoid adding tens of thousands in permitting costs, and on the 65+ tax freeze to lock in your tax liability before property values escalate further. Llano County land has appreciated aggressively over the past decade, so without the freeze, your annual tax bill could spiral out of control. The freeze is mandatory here. Without it, you're watching your retirement budget erode in real time. This region is for retirees who have the capital for a substantial land purchase and who are optimizing for quality of life rather than absolute frugality. You're still off-grid capable, still benefiting from Texas's legal framework, but you're paying a premium for location and aesthetics. The calculation is whether the hill country experience justifies spending $20,000 more on land and $1,000 more annually on taxes compared to Hudspeth. Northeast Texas. Red River County shifts the entire cost equation by solving water naturally. The median land price here is $6,950 per acre, substantially higher than the desert counties. But the region receives over 24 inches of annual precipitation, making rainwater harvesting exceptionally viable. In the arid West, water security costs $15,000 to $30,000 for a well, or $500 to $1,000 monthly for hauling. In Red River County, you spend $5,000 to $15,000 once on a robust rainwater harvesting system. Tanks, gutters, filters, pumps, and you're done. The higher land cost is offset by eliminating the single largest infrastructure expense of desert off-grid living. When you run the total 5-year cost, Red River County often comes out cheaper than Hudspeth despite the higher per-acre price. The region sits in the piney woods, meaning the landscape includes mature timber. That timber provides building materials, firewood for heating, and habitat for wildlife. Many recreational tracks here are marketed with no restrictions, and some listings include electricity service at the property line, which allows for a semi-off-grid approach where you maintain grid connection for backup while relying primarily on solar and batteries. That hybrid model gives you resilience without the anxiety of total disconnection. The operational challenge in East Texas is humidity. You're managing moisture and ventilation constantly, which impacts your energy needs. You'll run fans, dehumidifiers, or passive ventilation systems year-round, adding to your electrical load. Mold and mildew become concerns in any structure that doesn't breathe well. But the trade-off, reliable water without drilling, is often worth it for retirees who don't want to gamble on well success or commit to perpetual water hauling. Deep East Texas. Tyler County takes the humid forest model further. The land here supports lush vegetation, food forests, and abundant wildlife. Rainfall is high, particularly in May and June when monthly totals reach nearly 5 inches. Rainwater harvesting is not just viable, it's almost impossible to fail at. Your tanks fill reliably and you're more likely dealing with overflow management than scarcity. The regulatory landscape focuses on subdivision covenants rather than county-level building codes. In unincorporated areas, you have typical Texas flexibility. The main due diligence task is reviewing any deed restrictions or homeowner association rules that might apply to your specific parcel. Some subdivisions were platted decades ago with restrictions that are no longer enforced, but technically still on record. Clarify enforcement status before buying. The challenge here is managing the tropical climate. Summer humidity is oppressive. Tropical weather systems bring heavy rain, wind, and occasional flooding. Your structures need to handle moisture without rotting. Your solar panels need to shed debris efficiently, and your ventilation systems need to run constantly. That environmental demand increases your energy consumption compared to the dry desert. A solar system that would coast along in Hudspeth needs additional capacity here just to manage humidity control. Tyler County works for retirees who want a permaculture-focused lifestyle, who value forest resources and biodiversity, and who are comfortable managing the complications of a humid, storm-prone climate. The water is free and abundant. The land supports intensive food production. You can grow tropical and subtropical species that would die instantly in West Texas. The cost is vigilance around moisture and weather, and acceptance that your structures and systems will degrade faster than they would in the arid regions. Southeast border. Newton County combines low taxes with high natural resources. The average annual property tax here is $523, very low for East Texas and competitive with the desert counties. The county borders the Big Thicket National Preserve, providing access to protected wilderness and extraordinary biodiversity. The preserve protects multiple ecosystems, swamps, forests, prairies, all within a relatively compact area. The land here supports the same rainwater harvesting advantages as Red River and Tyler counties: high annual precipitation, minimal drought risk, and straightforward system design. The regulatory environment in unincorporated areas is permissive, allowing for alternative structures and off-grid systems without excessive oversight. You're far enough from major population centers that county officials have neither the interest nor the resources to micromanage rural homesteaders. Newton County has attracted small, eco-focused communities. A Pony Gardens is forming in the area, organized around permaculture and sustainability principles. That emerging network provides social support, shared knowledge, and a sense of community that's often missing in isolated off-grid settings. You can attend workshops, share seeds and starts, and learn from people who've already navigated the learning curve of humid climate homesteading. This region is ideal for retirees who want the financial advantages of low taxes, the practical advantages of abundant water, and the social advantages of connecting with like-minded people. You're not disappearing into total isolation, you're joining a loose network of people pursuing similar goals. That community structure can be the difference between thriving and burning out, especially in the first challenging years of off-grid transition. Maverick County. Maverick County sits along the southern border, acting as a transition zone between the arid west and the greener south. The average annual property tax here is $1,015, higher than the desert counties but still manageable compared to suburban areas or high-tax states. The regulatory presence is minimal, and large tracts of unrestricted land are available at reasonable prices. The climate here is semi-arid rather than extreme desert, meaning you get slightly more rainfall and better soil conditions than Hudspeth or Terrell. That transition makes ranching and agriculture more viable. You can raise livestock with less supplemental feed, grow gardens with less irrigation, and achieve greater food self-sufficiency without the constant battle against total aridity. Native grasses hold up better here, and mesquite and acacia provide fodder and shade that don't exist in the high desert. The land cost is moderate, the taxes are reasonable, and the regulatory freedom is high. Maverick County works for retirees who want the low-tax, high-freedom model of West Texas, but who also want slightly more hospitable conditions for farming and ranching. You're not quite as isolated as the extreme desert, and the land gives back more in terms of productivity. If your off-grid plan involves growing a significant portion of your own food or raising animals, Maverick's transitional climate makes those goals substantially easier to achieve than they would be in Hudspeth or Terrell counties. The 15 regions cluster around a handful of core trade-offs. You can chase the absolute lowest cost in Hudspeth or Kinney counties, paying $400 to $500 annually in property taxes and virtually nothing in regulatory compliance, but you're accepting extreme isolation and solving water on your own. You can move east to Red River or Newton counties, paying more for land but eliminating the well drilling gamble by harvesting rain. You can choose community structure in Spur or Terlingua, giving up some financial edge for legal certainty and social networks. Or you can pay the premium for Llano County, prioritizing hill country beauty and recreation over pure savings. The legal framework underneath all of it, no state income tax, the 10-acre septic exemption, the 65-plus property tax freeze, remains constant. Those three mechanisms form the foundation. The region you choose determines which secondary costs dominate your budget and which lifestyle factors you're optimizing for. Texas gives you the tools to engineer a retirement where monthly expenses shrink to nearly nothing, where your biggest recurring costs are things you control directly like food and fuel, and where your housing and infrastructure investments pay dividends for decades because the tax liability stays frozen. The choice isn't which region is objectively best. The choice is which trade-off matches your tolerance for isolation, your capacity to manage specific infrastructure challenges, and your priorities around community versus absolute autonomy. Some retirees will thrive in the silent expanse of Terrell County. Others need the social fabric of Spur or the recreational access of Val Verde. The framework is consistent. The application is personal. Texas has created the regulatory and financial environment. What you build within it depends entirely on what you're willing to trade and what you refuse to compromise on.